I'm your host, Rhonda Hammond, AIA, and this is the Voice of Florida Architecture, the podcast of AIA Florida. Welcome. AIA Florida has a long and distinguished history, one defined by leadership, service, and a commitment to excellence that has set the bar for professional associations nationwide. From sound financial stewardship and strong collaboration with local components to conventions and programs admired across the country, the strength of AI Florida today is the direct result of the leaders who came before us. This podcast series celebrates that legacy. Through a special collection of conversations, we are honoring the past presidents and leaders of AIA Florida whose vision, dedication, and service have shaped both the association and the architectural profession at both state and national levels. These individuals represent an extraordinary depth of experience and institutional knowledge, an invaluable resource that continues to inform and inspire our work today. In each episode, we reconnect with architects who have served AIA Florida and the American Institute of Architects in meaningful leadership roles throughout their careers and into retirement. We explore their professional journeys, reflect on the evolution of the profession, and examine the challenges and opportunities that defined their eras of leadership. Most importantly, this series creates space to listen, learn, and preserve the wisdom of those who dedicated their time and talents to service to the profession. Their stories, insights, and guidance provide essential context for today's practitioners and inspiration for future generations, reinforcing the enduring values of leadership, service, and mentorship that define AIA Florida. Today, we will celebrate the leadership of Steve Panzarino, AIA. Welcome, Steve, and thanks for being here today.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So since we began the podcast, and this is our third season, you've been on our list of guests. You are the AIA Florida representative on the National Strategic Council, and I've wanted you to share about your experience there, but we'll get to that. But as a past president, you're part of the legacy we want to celebrate. But first, as has become our tradition, I ask that you share your story of choosing to become an architect.
I don't think my story is a whole lot different than probably most people. When I was a kid, I loved playing in my backyard with matchboxes and digging in the dirt and building imaginary cities and kind of spending the whole day creating places that I thought were going to be fun and exciting and very interesting. Building things, creating kind of these imaginary spaces were something that I kind of started doing very early on. Like everyone who probably became an architect, I love drawing. I love kind of doing crafts and all kinds of art related type projects and things like that in school. So I kind of had that very art focused kind of mentality right out of the gate. Probably one of the things that inspired me the most to become an architect is a TV show that I really used to love watching. And that was the incredible, what was it? The talking, Mr. Ed, the talking horse.
Oh, Wilbur.
So
yes.
He was an architect. And I know everybody's going to think I was going to say the Brady Bunch, which
exactly.
No, that was not the one that got me. It was having a talking horse. I thought was kind of the coolest part of being an architect. So that was it for me.
So the talking horse. That's great. Okay, so you hail from AIA Gulf Coast, your home component, and you've served the profession and the association in many capacities at local levels in both New Jersey and Florida. I didn't realize you were from New Jersey. Then being elected to the State Board of Florida in 2010, again at every level of service on the board, from state director, advocacy, leading FAPAC, organizing our conventions, leading the finance committee, and you represented AIA Florida at large state conferences in the state government network. You've served as vice president for our 4 primary committees of advocacy, professional development, communications, and resiliency. You even served on the search committee, which resulted in our current EVP, Ms. Becky Magdalena, who's an honorary AIA member. But the consistent theme of your service, and I've spoken with Becky about this many times, that it's been amazing to witness how each president was elected at a time when their specific skill set was most needed by the profession. But your consistent theme has been leading during times of unprecedented challenges to the profession of architecture, including a pandemic, organizational restructuring, social upheaval, and financial hardship. So, your superpower is your ability to lead disparate groups of members to understand and even accept different perspectives to reach a consensus. Steve, you stepped up at a crucial point in leadership of the association. Tell us about being president of AIA Florida during 2020.
Well, it was a very interesting time, that's for sure. I don't know that I will say I stepped up. I was elected president. It was my time to serve. I was just unfortunately dealt an incredible challenge and circumstances that nobody anticipated. I did the best I could. I thought my role was to lead the organization, to maintain consistency, to try and keep us on even keel, not let any of the outside influences really detract from our long-term mission, and make sure that the decisions we made in light of the current circumstances were in the best interest of the Institute, and making sure that, again, we kind of stayed true to our mission and not get distracted and not caught up in things that we had no control over. So it's just something you had to do. It really wasn't something I was looking to do. Hopeful that I did a good job in kind of fulfilling that obligation as my presidency.
Like I said, you had the specific skill set that we needed at that time. But let's talk about your convention theme, craft, community, and culture. Tell us about coming up with that theme.
You know, that's always probably the most difficult thing as a president, is coming up with your theme, right? Because you want it to be something that people are like, wow, that's really cool. I'm excited. I'm interested. But it really, I was trying to think back to what inspired me to be an architect, how I got from where I was as a student to a practitioner, and what are the things that were important to me, and how do I express them as part of my theme. All right. So for me, craft, I remember giving my speech, and it had to do with taking a drafting course in high school. And I had to go and I had to learn to letter. It was back in the day when we had a letter. And every day at lunch, I would sit at the lunch table with an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. And all my friends would look at me like I was just crazy, because I would start in the upper left corner of the paper and I would go A, B, C, D, E, F, all the way to Z, and then 0 through 9. And when I got to 9, I'd start with an A. And I would do that until I filled the entire page with 1/8-inch letters. And I learned how to letter by doing that. And to me, that was the craft. It was kind of a part showmanship. I mean, sitting there at that lunch table, you know, people were like, what are you doing? Well, I'm learning to be an architect. And they were like, really? Like, we're in high school, dude. What do you? But it was really important to me that, you know, developing a skill that was appropriate to my profession was really something I could start early on. So that craft was important to me. And then, you know, as far as community, clearly the nature of what we do is to build communities, to be resilient, to strengthen the places that we live, work, and play, and to make sure that, you know, any opportunity we have to contribute is really important. That's fundamentally what we're doing, is we're bettering the places that we touch on a regular basis. And then in terms of culture, you know, of course, I want to make sure that the culture of AIA is really a place where everybody feels that they can be welcomed, that they can contribute, that they have an opportunity to learn something, and doing all of that while having a good time, right? We're a serious profession. We do very serious work, but we also need to have kind of valves that allow us to let off steam. Part of what we do is just get together, the camaraderie, the fellowship, the family that I always refer to of AIA is really important. So those were my themes, and I wanted to make sure we express them, maybe cut short due to COVID, but I did what I could.
Yeah, good. If everybody will remember, that year was our convention was held virtually. That must have been an interesting exercise.
Yes. It was all of it was quite interesting because Vicky and I were in constant communication the month and a half before the pandemic had just surfaced. We
Hmm.
were hearing about it in the news. We were starting to hear about things getting shut down, things canceled. And it's like, should we cancel this? Let's keep it going another week and see what the hotel says. And it just kind of worked into a crescendo where eventually we had no option. The hotel told us that they were not going to allow us to get together physically. And so we had to pivot, and we had to pivot very quickly. And so the idea of doing a virtual convention surfaced. It was, again, probably the first few times that people were using this medium of Zoom and Teams, and how do we even communicate on the screen with each other? It was a little awkward, but we got through it, and we were able to continue with that. I will say, I think gave us a great opportunity with the design awards. Nadia and I were the hosts that year, and our theme that she selected for the awards had to do with the jury in Paris. So we did a night in Paris. It was quite a technical feat to get that pulled together, and the recording of it and all the costume changes and things that we had to do was quite fun. I hope people enjoyed it. I think there was a good turnout on YouTube. Probably can still search for it on YouTube and find not only the awards themselves, but there is, I believe, a outtakes video that is circulating around that kind of captured us in the more humorous version of the awards. So
I haven't seen that, so I have to go look.
yeah,
I
if you
thought
look
it
at
was
that one,
fabulous.
it was fun.
It
It
was fun
was.
because it came off very professional. It looked well. It looked like you had been doing this all your life. It was professional. It looked good. It looked like an award show that you would watch on TV. So I was impressed. And I didn't think you had a lot of time to pull that together either.
No, it was again kind of a quick pivot. We were able to get to Tallahassee and work in the sound studio there. So I think it kind of worked out. I mean, again,
Hmm.
we were searching for some costumes, and we tried to make it humorous, and again, without having a 300, 400 person audience sitting in front of you, it was a little bit easier to kind of pull it off. But the staff and the team that helped us do that did a tremendous job of organizing it and making it easy for us. I do respect those who are in the television industry and have to do that on a regular basis as part of their job. So,
So
yeah.
switching to some of the more serious issues, the Champlain Towers collapse was part of your tenure, and you were part of that legislative task force. Tell us about the task force work.
Well, we were asked, the governor had put together a group of design professionals ranging in disciplines, of course, structural, civil, architects, to get together and kind of review the circumstances, not necessarily do a technical analysis. There was other teams that were responsible for really getting to the analysis of collapse itself. We were looking at the implications to the building code, the implication to homeowners associations, to future residents in condominiums, how they could live comfortably and not have anxiety
Mhm.
that their building was going to collapse next. So it was more of kind of an overview of the situation that occurred. I mean, it was tragic, and it was emotional to be part of that discussion. I think we reached a good conclusion. There was a number of legislative initiatives that moved forward in order to help prevent that from ever occurring again.
Mhm.
I think it was a situation that occurred at a time in history when we were maybe not as diligent and responsible towards the building codes, and things were able to slip through the cracks. There was a mentality that, I can get to it tomorrow. I can defer my maintenance a little bit longer, and not making the necessary investments. And so I think as a result, We have definitely brought that to the forefront of our thinking as a profession. We're much more rigorous about how we solve for that problem. I think it will help us prevent it from happening in the future.
So there's some lasting impact on that, on the resulting code
Yeah.
updates. Yeah. Another event that took place during your tenure, you penned a poignant response to the social unrest after the death of George Floyd. Tell us about your thought process going into that.
Yeah, that was another stressful event that came my way. And it was a very emotional time for everyone. Everybody had an opinion as to what happened, why it happened, how do you prevent it from happening again, etc. I saw that there was definitely different groups aligning themselves, if you will. And then at some point, it kind of all just gelled. And honestly, it was one evening I woke up, it was probably 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and it was just in my head. And I sat down at the computer and I started writing that response that was eventually published. And it really was an attempt to try and say, we all have different opinions. We all witnessed something that was tragic, that should never have happened. And we have to kind of look at each other's perspectives, put your own personal emotions aside for a moment and see it from someone else's viewpoint. And if you do that, you'll get a better appreciation for how they see things. I think that applies to a lot of things. You could probably even say that in today's environment, right? I mean, we are going through another kind of moment in history that is causing people to align themselves in various camps, which is not necessarily the smartest thing to do. People need to kind of take an opinion or a view from someone else's eyes. And if they can do that and see what it means to them, they'll understand that we are all so much more connected and similar in our goals and philosophies than we would think. It was that kind of thinking and mentality that I tried to bring to my entire presidency, because we had a lot of issues that kind of pushed us. Even the COVID, there were those who were like, this is not going to be anything serious. We should all be getting together. We don't need to wear masks. And then others who were on the other side, looking at the fear of losing a loved one. And many of us did have that happen, or had someone in our family or friends who suffered seriously because of it. So the emotion has to be kind of neutral. That was where I came from. You really like to bring up some old emotional, heavy topics during my presidency.
I do. That was my whole point, is that how the right person in the right job at the time, and your level-headedness and your even tone speech, it was what we needed at the time. It makes me proud that an architect and architects have a responsibility, and you showed us how to do that, how to speak out. I've always appreciated that about you. So tell me, the work you did as president, what was the work that you appreciated most?
But after what we just talked about, I feel like most of my presidency was crisis management. And I think where we probably succeeded is by pivoting to a virtual year. We were able to maintain and actually improve our finances. We were able to do a number of online programming for the first time that actually generated revenue. We were able to make some lemonade at the end of the year. I don't know that I intentionally went out of my way to do that, but I think because we didn't fall off the tracks, we didn't get into panic mode, we didn't start to make some serious adjustments thinking that we had to do something completely radically different. We were able to maintain our course. And by doing that, we were able to create some improvement. And so I think that that's probably where the highlights. I mean, if you ask me, I feel like I didn't have a whole lot of highlights because, one, the year went by so fast. Two, there were so many things that were part of the distraction along the way. You do the best you can.
We were able to stay on track and keep us focused, be financially responsible, and it was due to our leadership.
I appreciate that. And anyone who has served as president knows clearly It is absolutely a team sport. You get to be the quarterback for a year, but there are a lot of others in AIA who are serving alongside you. There is an incredible staff who work
Absolutely.
tirelessly to help us succeed, and in their own right are a force to be reckoned with. You just have to learn to rely on each other. It's not about you, it's about helping everybody else around you just do better work.
A few years back, National AIA went through a restructuring, and you were part of the restructuring of AIA Florida. Talk about that a little bit.
The idea was we had to be nimble, right? We had become an organization that was, I mean, I don't want to use the word bloated, but it's the only one that comes to mind immediately. We became a little fat, a little heavy. We had to kind of figure out a way to trim the board, kind of realign its mission. I think one of the great outcomes of doing that is that we focused the board on board issues, right? Setting a vision and a course for the future, along with fiduciary responsibility. And so we really kind of got that board lean and operating in a very straight and narrow path. As an offshoot of that, we realized we still had to create kind of a future state. And as a result of that, we created the Strategic Council for Florida. Probably one of the best moves that we have done in the last 20 years was the advent of the Strategic Council.
Well, speaking of the Strategic Council, because it consists of the 7 past presidents, so you served on the advisory council, and you were integral in the study that deemed relevance as our focus. And this process is underway as we speak. During that time, we concluded that this research would inform our strategic plan, the new one that would be developed in 2028. So from your being out in those conversations and your research on the topic, why do you think relevance is important as we look toward the future for the profession and the association?
As we've done in our conversations leading up to defining relevance, we've looked at it from 2 perspectives, an outward facing view and then also an inward facing view, realizing that post-COVID, technology has changed in the way that we communicate, the way that we learn, the way that we interact. And so as a result of that, we as an organization, a member organization, have to adapt to those changing factors so that we remain relevant to our members. We have members who are going to be joining AIA in the very near future who have went through their formative education years as a COVID student. And so they think radically different than those of us who went through pre-COVID. And so we have to acknowledge that the way they do things influences how the future of the Institute will operate. And I think that that's part of the relevance, is if we don't do that, we'll become a dinosaur organization. We'll be left to the past. We won't look to the future. We won't embrace those changes that are coming as a result of the way people just interact and interface differently. So I think that that's a critically important piece of our growth and ability to kind of stay relevant for future members. The second part, obviously, is the outward facing, and this is probably a long-term issue that we've been trying to deal with, right? The relevance and the value of being an architect and what the contribution architecture makes to the greater society. And so for us, that's an important research topic to, one, ask the right questions of the general public, right? We, as an internal organization, can talk to each other about architecture, how we practice, but that's one viewpoint. Going back to my looking at it from the lens of others, what does the outside world think of us? And if we can probe into that and kind of get some insight as to how they see our behaviors, our value, our contributions, our lack of contribution, our obstacles, whatever it is that they think we provide, if we can learn that, we can adjust our organization in a way to address those things in a positive way so that, again, we can clear up, or we can add value and keep us relevant to the outside world.
It's an exciting process. We've issued the RFP and have started getting questions from the different consultants. So that's moving along. So it is an exciting prospect.
Good.
I want to shift to the Jacob Leadership Institute. Its mission is to build a robust pipeline of leaders to expand the profession's influence in the public setting. Now, they developed the leadership program, and Adam Gale, AIA, our current president, and I attended the inaugural leadership program in 2019. So I know that you were instrumental in formation of that program. Share with us about your participation and what the idea was for this program in the beginning.
I can't remember where we were. There have honestly been so many board meetings and so many gatherings where we're all sitting around a lunch table or a conference table and just kind of throwing ideas out on the table and talking them through. And one of them was the fact that we had this Jacob Leadership Institute. And at the time, it was stagnant. It was really a collection of kind of best practices, some videos, some articles that were in archives. It was on the website. You can go track it down if you wanted, but it wasn't active. It wasn't really. And I'm like, well, why don't we actually do? And I said, create a leadership program. And I had recently come through the Tampa Bay Partnerships CEO Direct program, which was essentially a leadership light program. And I thought, why don't we do something like this where we can teach people about leadership, help them understand what it means to lead. How do you lead? And we thought that that was an opportunity. And then I was working with Wendy. We said there are so many of those. Christopher Kelly program is out there. There's leadership in every city. There's how do we make a program that's unique? And I credit Wendy because she said, I have a friend who's an FBI agent and he plays mind games with people. And I said, that's exactly what we need to do, right? I got excited over the fact that Brett was really going to be different. It wasn't like your typical program where you're going to sit there and nod off listening to, what does it mean to be a leader? He was going to kind of take you through some head games and kind of twist your thinking where you go, oh, crap.
At
really?
every conversation. It was phenomenal.
I thought that uniqueness is going to create a program that was going to be enduring. Right. It was going to have kind of momentum behind it to a large extent. Brett is he's
Hood,
kind of
yes.
the grandfather now. I know it's Mickey, and Mickey really wants to, his name is on the door, but Brett has been very instrumental in driving kind of the performance of the program. It is exciting to see that the first year, Wendy and I were on the call going, do we do this program? Can we actually do it? We only have a few applicants. And I said, well, let's do it and we'll see what happens next year. And luckily, word of mouth got out and the reputation of the program grew. And my understanding is now there's a waiting list. And that's exactly where we wanted to be.
A waiting list, yes.
Yeah.
As I mentioned, we are privileged to have you as one of the 3 representatives on the National Strategic Council. You've completed your first of 3 years, I believe. So share your perspective on the purpose and the importance of the council.
So, it's a 3-year term. I'm in the throes of year number 2. Gloria Coulter and Ignacio Reyes are my other 2 partners in crime on the Strategic Council. And I say that because actually, Florida has the greatest representation at national on the Strategic Council as a result of 2 at-large positions in the Florida seat. And so, we do have a voice, and it's an important opportunity for us to be seen as part of the leadership at the national level. This similar kind of idea that we have here in Florida. We are given study topics that are derived from the board. The board kind of sets the tone for the year in terms of what we would be studying. And then it's a similar research activity where we take deep dives into each of those areas and try to understand the evolving nature of our profession and what influences are affecting us? What issues do we have to be keenly aware of, and opportunities for us to step in and take a stronger position, but doing it from a place of knowledge and not a place of emotional reaction? So, the Strategic Council plays a very important role in helping the board make those kind of decisions at the end of the day. We have put forward a couple of resolutions. The AI one last year was one of the key ones that we had studied the previous year. And so that's a result of that study. I think we're going to see more things like that coming to the forefront, because we are really at a point in our profession that we are changing quickly. And we have to really be prepared for that.
So share with our listeners who may not know, how do you bring that information back to the state?
Part of my role as the Florida representative is to provide a report every month. We let everyone know where we are in the process. Sometimes there's not a lot of information to share, I'll say, while the sausage is being made. There are times where we're doing a lot of reach out. Currently, I serve on the practice study group. We are reaching out to architects in Asia, in Europe, in the United States, to kind of look at alternative practice models, ways of generating additional revenue. And so, until we kind of gather all of that information and then coalesce it into a kind of stream of consciousness that makes sense, there's not a lot to kind of share all that detail. But once we get that organized, those presentations, those reports will then become part of, the public record. Our members will be able to access them through the AIA website. And, the reports that I provide will have all the links and everything to that. And so I think even in the last Friday Facts, the report had the link to the 2025 report. So you can go back and see the results of what those studies concluded and recommended. Communication is a big part of it.
So what do you think is the most important service that AIA Florida provides, if you had to pick one?
Well, I mean, I've always said our greatest service as an organization is advocacy. Our ability to advocate and represent our profession. It's always disappointing to hear people who kind of talk ill of AIA and AIA Florida, for whatever reasons, too expensive, I don't get any value. But they don't understand that, when we are advocating and we are out there speaking on behalf of the profession, we don't care if you're a member or not. Exactly. You're a fellow architect. You are practicing alongside of us. Our advocacy is going to benefit everyone. So we would love to have you as a member. We really want to see everyone find a purpose and a value of being a member, but understand that we don't do anything different for a non-member as we would a member. Advocating for our profession, maintaining our stature is a high priority. We have to continuously remind everyone the things that we do in terms of protecting health, safety, and welfare.
And our ability to practice.
Correct.
So as we embrace the future with all its challenges, and as we've heard from your tenure as president, all the unknowns, what advice would you offer the board and future architects?
The advice, obviously, I would give to the board is always remain fresh, always look at things from a different perspective. Don't focus on driving your opinion as the only one. There are many amongst all of us, and we have to kind of find the common ground, and we have to kind of pull all of that together so that we are unified, and it will keep us kind of progressing in a positive direction. What I would say to future architects, and if I were to go back to my high school self, I would clearly say, you absolutely are going to make the right decision. It is the coolest job to have of any job. You will love every minute of it. You will pull your hair out, as you can see, if you meet me. It can be frustrating at times. It can be challenging, but the rewards are immeasurable. I mean, I could tell stories all day long about projects and the people that I have worked with, have learned from, have influenced, that just make your life that much richer. There is no better opportunity than being an architect. I would not change it for the world.
No more nobler a profession there is.
Exactly.
So, Steve, you have served our profession and association honorably with
I am
intention.
serving our profession. I am far from done.
Well, I'm talking, that's true because you're not retired. But I
No.
wanted to say with intention because you do it with intention. You have good intentions and you want the best for our profession. And you have been an inspiration to me, and I'm certain to all the other architects around the state. I've appreciated the support and advice that you've always been ready to give me. Thank you for your service and sharing your story today.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate it. I hope I said something interesting throughout the hour that we were talking. I always feel like I could always do more. I could always do better. I try each day to just improve. If I can just impact one person and see others like you who take the reins and do a great job that you did, it
Thank
gives
you.
me that sense of pride as well.
Thank you. So, thank you for listening to this episode of our AIA Florida Legacy series. We hope today's conversation offered insight, perspective, and inspiration drawn from a lifetime of leadership and service to the architectural profession. The experiences and reflections shared by our past presidents and leaders remind us that AIA Florida's strength is built on membership, commitment, and a shared responsibility to advance the profession. Their wisdom continues to inform the work we do today and the future we are shaping together. Join us for future episodes as we continue these conversations, preserving the stories, lessons, and legacy of the leaders who helped define AIA Florida. This is Rhonda Hammond, AIA, your host. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Voice of Florida Architecture, a podcast of AIA Florida.